Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Today is April 30th, 2019. This is a special business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. I'll ask if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Glassbach?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Bob Jones?
Here.
Mr. Tony Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw? And student representatives.
Okay. And I don't think we have anyone who wants to comment for citizens' comments, but if anyone would like to, you are welcome to step to the microphone. Okay, thank you. Well, we're really here for mostly one thing, but I'm going to start by exempting item A so that we can talk about it a little bit separately. And we're here to award the contract for the upgrades to the athletic fields and bathroom press boxes. And a little bit of discussion happened at, I know, the subcommittee meeting. Mrs. King, do you mind chiming in a little bit on how that played out?
Actually, the athletic subcommittee meeting, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. So we met, I think that was just last week. So we'll go back to when we first got the original bids. The original bids came in about $1 million more than what we had anticipated. So we had 4 bidders. They came in at about $3.8 million. And we decided as a committee that we were then going to put out an addendum to those 4 bidders and ask for a deduct, meaning what would your price be reduced by if you did not do the upgrades on the practice field and if you did not do the upgrades to the throwing area. We sent that out, David Potter from PAR and Arthur Eddy sent that out to those 4 bidders, and they came back in, and luckily the numbers came back very favorable to just about the $1 million we were missing. Okay, so unfortunately, we've already had to make cuts to the project. We are hoping that at a later date in the not too distant future, we might be able to put the throwing cage back in, and the not too distant future after that, the practice field. The numbers seemed a little high, but it worked in our favor so that we can get that project back into our $3 million area, which is what we have in the bond. So then that way we didn't have to cut anything else from the bond. So there were actually 3 deducts in that bid. The first one that we had asked for was to use something called the Brock fill. I don't know if any of you remember that.
Do you remember when we passed around all? Yeah. Okay.
So the recommendation is that you would accept the Brock fill. So that means we're not doing the coated sand. We do the Brock instead. We will not do the practice field, and we will not do the throwing cage. That makes D. Gregorio the low bidder at $2,652,000. On top of that, we need to add a contingency of $150,000, which we think is enough to cover. That's from the professional opinion of Arthur Eddy and David Potter. I also put in here that we have to remember that we had some leftover consulting fees from Park Corporation that the school committee previously approved on January 29th, but those are supposed to be bonded, $34,000. And then we had to add the Peregrine Group, which is our owner's project manager, required by RIDE on any project $1.5 million or over, and that's $28,200. So the total we're looking at is $2,864,000. So that leaves us right under the $3 million mark, because in a second, number 2 of the vote, I'm recommending that the bathrooms, the bathrooms in the press box, that we pay for that out of fund balance. That way, it still gives a little wiggle room in the bond. It's about $130,000, and I think that will save us so that we will be able to do something with the throwing cage and or the practice field down the line. So the request today, after you have discussed it, is that you approve the award of the contract to D. Gregorio at the $2,652,000, along with the project contingency of $150,000. The other 2
Will
items.
your motion need to have those numbers?
It should.
Okay, so if you could say them again so I can.
D. Gregorio, base contract, Actually, let's do this. Let's start from the beginning. Their base bid is $3,852,000, reduced by $195,000 for the Brock.
And that's deduct one.
Yep.
I could say deduct one, because
Yep.
that's all in the bid.
Yep. Deduct two is the practice field for $576,000. Deduct three is the throwing area for $429,000, and that comes down to a net of $2,652,000. We will put aside a project contingency, I hope, of $150,000. You add in two previously approved consulting contracts, one for Park Corporation at $34,010. Paragon Group, $28,200.
Do I need the names on those?
No.
28,200?
And your total is estimated total, $2,864,210.
Thank you. And just a little more comment, I was able to attend that subcommittee meeting. The recommendation of the subcommittee is just a recommendation. We can do whatever we want with that. But the thought was that by taking the Brockville deduct is one that our consultants have been, I mean, you can speak to the product, you're comfortable with that product, and that saves some money there, and still avoids, what we've always wanted to avoid, which is the use of the crumb rubber, which we've always wanted to keep off the field. The other two deducts are things that we definitely want to do, and it's just that when you look at the dollars that we are saving by not putting them in these bids, we aren't certain that we'll be able to get a lower bid if we bid it out again, but it's reasonably likely, is that a good way to phrase it, that if we rebid those contracts separately, we might be able to get numbers that are much more favorable to our original budget. Not only that, but that means it wouldn't get done this year. That's the big thing. Those two items would have to bid out for next summer. But we would also, by then, know where we stand with respect to the contingency that we've set aside, and we would hopefully have some of those funds available as well. And then we can look at where other bond projects are falling in, whether we might need fund balance, if there's still something to make up. But by not approving that today, we're not saying we're never going to do it. We're just saying that we might be able to do it more economically. This just doesn't, the numbers that we're saving by not doing now, it just doesn't make sense to do it. And the way I phrased it when we were at the committee was, if we were pulling this aside and saying it was going to cost this much to do these two items, we wouldn't be doing them. So it doesn't make sense. That's the logic behind it. Any questions for anyone, consultant-wise or otherwise?
We do have our Cracker Jack consultants here tonight.
Well, I just want to, I think it's, thank you. And I'm glad you pointed out on the Brock, so in case people didn't know, that Brock is not crumb rubber.
Right.
And it has a 10-year warranty, right?
That's right.
Which I do think it brings up a good point, which is the probable life expectancy of this field. It's probably somewhere in that time frame. And so I think both future school committees and future town councils need to take that into consideration, that it's probably going to be about 1.5 million conservatively
To replace?
to replace the turf and the track.
No, you won't be in that range. So that the good news is their turf replacement range is somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000.
And the track.
Well, the track is an overspray that you can do for the next 3 oversprays. So the overspray is somewhere about 90,000. Again, that's today's
I was
dollars.
going to say, those are today's
That's
dollars.
today's dollars, what inflation is in the future. But when you overspray, you should be looking at every 8 to 9 years of overspraying that track, 80,000. And it's not a full reconstruction of that track. It's an overspray, so it's a structural spray. You can do that 3 times. So that gets you close to the 27 to 30 year mark. After that, you're looking at replacing that track, because what happens is that layer creates an impervious layer, and it's no longer, you can't get any more structural spray on top of it.
So yes, so thank you. But add the other items that go along with the complex and lights, and I just think it's the point that we should be putting away money as we go along. So future committees don't sit there and go, where are we going to find 7-digit figures to do all this replacement. We do want to thank the folks who have long advocated for this and have worked hard from starting both with advocacy and then within the superintendent and his leadership team on this, as well as all the school bond items that came forth and that we're getting going on making those a reality. And I would like to thank, I think, our consultants and stuff have been not only very helpful, but from my interactions, worked well with us, have been here, answered questions, and I think added a lot of value to guiding us to the right decision tonight on this. In advance, I'd like to thank, on the town side, the town manager, town council for helping to expedite any paperwork that needs to go along with this,
And the
because
signatures that go with
because
them.
it is 30 mid-April. This is a tight timeline. And while we all have the goal of making this a reality for fall, we know certain things need to align. And while we think we're on the right schedule, everyone, including the weather, that can help expedite this would be greatly appreciated. I do think, and I don't know if it's during this discussion or not, if we could get just some clarification from the administration on summer use and boundaries and making sure everyone knows, what's going to be on limits, off limits.
Mr. Foster, can you help us out with that? We're wondering to make sure that everything's off limits.
Right.
Do you mind, I forgot to mention, when could you come to the mic? I just want to make sure, because when people watch on TV, they can't hear otherwise. We can hear you, but.
Yeah, all the school teams know that the field is basically, the stadium is basically off limits, the stadium and the track, and we believe it will also be the practice field area once DeGregorio takes control of the construction site. The recreation is well aware that there is no use. We will have use of the practice fields where the JV baseball and softball fields are. The tennis courts, I believe, will also be available. But everyone is well aware of that, and we'll just be waiting to find an end date for that. So we've got the contingency plans for practices, the beginning of the fall practices to be held elsewhere, or on the practice fields that will be currently open.
Okay, yeah, I was concerned too about just the general public who might come in, or non-rec usages of that. And I don't think there's much, but I don't know, some organizations might use it over the summer for tournaments or stuff.
There'll be posted signs, I would
Yeah.
assume, by the GC to block, and stuff will be blocked
Yeah,
off.
they usually have temporary fencing,
Yep,
and it
yep.
is a police take notice if anyone's beyond those.
Yeah, anything outside,
Right.
sorry, Mike, but anything outside the city.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, mostly as a newbie. So once we approve this, then it goes to town council? You said
No.
signatures? How
No.
does it proceed?
I think it was about a month ago, the town council approved that the town manager could sign the contracts. They gave us about $4.2 million for the summer work was the estimate. So Dr. Ajay and I have been working with Town Manager Mollis to ensure that he knows we absolutely have to get those signatures no later than Thursday morning, is the conversation we just had with him. So I've done a lot of upfront work. I've given him all of the documentation that I have to date, pending tonight's meeting, pending Greg's signature. Mr. Mollis had a couple of questions for me this afternoon that I answered, so we should be all squared to get all the signatures we need Thursday. What he's going to do, Mr. Blasbog, is he's going to get his people. So right now I need Adam White, the town solicitor. He's going to get that. The finance director and the town manager, and then he's going to send it back to me, and I'm going to get your signature and send it to him just with the final vote that Amy's going to print out for me tonight. So that's the only thing that was waiting. I attached a copy of tonight's letters to him. I linked him to the RFPs in case they wanted it. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages. I gave him copies of the agendas that approved the Par Corporation consulting fee that we talked about, that approved the owner's project manager fee. So I have to tell you, when I started here 7 years ago, I spent $5 million in a bond. I never had a conversation with anybody about it. The bills went to the town manager's office. So this was a process and a form that Mr. Mollis and I came up with together. But he's comfortable with this, and he knows the next one is now gonna be the floor covering for Stony Lane and Fishing Cove. So he's in line for that.
And we expect work to start.
May 13th. So there'll be, it will actually start as soon as I can release the hounds, because there's a lot of submittals, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but the actual visible work that you'll see will be around the May 13th timeframe, when they'll start mobilizing in their trucks and all that, so.
I envision bulldozers on leashes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, any other questions?
We should put one of the cameras on time release. over
Yeah,
the
get
summer.
one of those
That would
time
be
lapse
cool.
things.
People can-
Oh, you know, that would be cool. You know, Mike Waterman is such a
Mike.
crackerjack
I
IT
bet we can
person.
get that. That'd make a
Yeah.
nice
We can
video.
check in over the summer.
That and some nice PR. too.
Sorry?
Live webcam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good idea.
All right.
And see how the Osprey's doing.
Yeah.
We don't want to upset that. We don't want the project halted because of
Federal wildlife laws.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah,
That wasn't an issue until.
Yeah, we were on the other side.
They are.
All right.
Dirt Wilson.
So, all right, with that being said, I'll make the motion because I wrote down all the numbers. Mrs. King, if you could watch carefully and correct me if I make any errors here. So I am going to make a motion to approve the bid to award to De Gregorio with a base bid of $3,852,000. However, we are going to deduct 1, 2, and 3. Deduct 1 being deduction of $195,000. Deduct 2 a reduction of $576,000, and deduct 3 of $429,000, which would be a balance at that point of $2,652,000. Mrs. Healy, I apologize. I know you're probably scrambling, but
That's all
we
right,
can
I'll help
read. Yeah. We are going to add a contingency of $150,000, as well as the 2 consultants' fees of $34,010 and $28,200, for a total amount of $2,864,210.
That's it.
That is a motion.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I don't think we ever exempted that. We exempted
You did.
one. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? A1 is taken care of with that motion and passes unanimously. Number 2,
Number 2, I do not have the numbers in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought I had that.
we don't need to tinker with that, but we just need to
We do
basically
not.
award the bid.
That is
with the
correct.
name. Okay.
So basically, what the second motion is for the, where is that? The second award is for the bathrooms and the press box window. And that, we're looking to, I'm recommending that be paid for from fund balance, like we said, so then that way it'll leave us a little bit more room in the bond area. And the low bid on that was Martone. The low bid, we received 2 bids. The low bid was Martone Construction at $120,105. I think we should have a $20,000 project contingency that you approve. So you'd be approving $140,105 tonight from fund balance to get that work done.
So again, I'll make a motion to approve item A2, which is the award of contract for the athletic field bathroom press box to Martone Construction for the bid of $120,105 with a $20,000 contingency for a total of $140,105 to be paid from fund balance. That is a motion.
Second.
We'll give it to Mr. Jones, he's closer to me, that would be Mr. Robert Jones. Any discussion on that item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, I sort of did this backwards, so we did the exempted consent agenda items.
I'll exempt item B.
And, okay, so we'll consider item B exempted. And then I just need a motion to approve item B. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins,
Second.
second from Mr. Tony Jones. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have, I think it, within the scope of this item, I think it brings up, and maybe the superintendent can add on to this, you know, the commissioner just came out with a ruling about field trips, and I don't know if this falls under that, it's kind of, to me, a gray area, but,
And I
think it
don't
was-
see this item as falling under that ruling. So the ruling that Mr. Jones is referring to is a court case that was dealt with the East Greenwich School Department about the ability of students to pay for field trips and how field trips are defined and that whole thing. So as long as a school department is funding a trip, or if there is kind of a fundraising effort in general to have a trip coming from a PTO, or in this case would be the activity account for the sailing team, where you're not requiring students to pay on their own or their parents to pay on their own for their kids to attend, then you're in the clear. And that does fit this guideline. So in this case, we're fine. The way the school department is dealing with this issue for the remainder of the school year, we already have field trips in effect happening that have already been planned, and many of them are already paid for. So we're going to continue with that, but we are looking to revise our policy, and I expect to come before the school committee before the end of June to propose some new procedures going forward. And every district in the state is dealing with this right now. So we're all asking the same questions of our attorneys about how to be in compliance. And I would hope that whether it be the Department of Education or the state legislature, that someone would take this on and try to have something a little bit more reasonable than what we just heard. But there are a lot of legalities to deal with as far as that's concerned. So,
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bill, because, I think you highlight the point I was trying to make, which is, you know, we get these rulings, and part of it underpinning is that co-curriculars are part of the BEP, yet some of our co-curricular things like athletics don't qualify for state aid, yet it's in the BEP, and you get sort of this ruling that, to me, actually puts a lot of students in jeopardy of missing out on opportunities, because it was issued really without a lot of, I think, thought behind it.
Very broad brush.
Yes.
yeah.
Maybe perhaps socializing it a bit more with superintendents and those who have to implement the policy to discuss some of those things. But I just thank you, Dr. Jay, for just putting it out there, because I think it's something that, you know, parents need to know about, might impact down the road. So that, and good luck to the sailing team.
And I just have one, what is the date? Is that this weekend?
No, it's, I believe it's the
May 11th.
weekend of the 11th.
Okay, so I did also put in there that for the chaperone, the van driver, we need his BCI.
He had one taken at Jamestown Police Department.
Terrific. So we should-
yesterday, so it's supposed to be either faxed over or sent over this week.
Terrific. Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? And all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Good luck to the sailing team. We've reached the end of our agenda. We will be back here, same place next week, though, 'cause we've got a regular meeting still.
Probably a little more on the agenda.
Yes.
All right, thank you all for coming to a special
Thank you.
meeting, but we need to get the shovels in the ground. We needed to get this approved. And good luck, folks. We wish you the best, and keep it all rolling. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you do a
Oh, I
motion
did-
to
that's okay.
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I guess, okay,
Second.
motion, second. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned, sorry, I forgot.
Who?
That sounded like, Ms. Hoskins, second, Ms. Hildebrand. Did you second it?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know.
Okay,
Right.
we're good. Okay.
Doug, Bob made the motion.